Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to this special edition of Jackson and Austin as we're coming to you from, where we come to you from at. And in tonight's show, we will be doing the CFP Top 10 Games of the Year as voted on by us, the committee. Now, then take into account, these are our personal opinions. These are the games we thought of as highly more than anything. And so don't take offense by any of these. Hopefully you'll have a good time and enjoy. But I cannot do this show without my good buddy and partner in crime, Jackson Johnson. Jackson, how are you doing? Are you ready to talk some college football and games of the year?
I'm doing pretty good, and yes, definitely, absolutely, I'm ready to discuss the top 10 games of the year from the 2023 season in all of college football. It's going to be exciting.
Well, Jackson, get us started. And as you notice, as we'll go along, I'm the pink slides, and Jackson, he's got very different variations of his. So, but Jackson, introduce our first one.
Well, Austin here picked Virginia upsetting the North Carolina Tar Heels in week 8 on the CW with a 31-27 victory as his top 10 game. Now, what led up to that, Austin?
So, it was really close. There was a lot of great games to choose from, and we'll get to the honorable mentions at the end here. But there's a lot of great games, a lot of choosing. But I chose this game for two particular reasons. It's the South's oldest rival, and number two is the underdog won. Because if we all remember Jackson, North Carolina was unbeaten at this point, and a lot of people had crowned them the second best team in the ACC behind Florida State. And the previous week, Louisville, who had that big, fantastic win over Notre Dame, went to Pittsburgh, and as Jackson's famous saying goes, that's where ranked teams go to die, and that's what happened to us that day. And then North Carolina was appointed second place, and everything was looking up good. The defense was playing well. Drake May was balling. His Heisman hopes were still high, but then Tony Huskett and those Cavaliers this was an incredible game to watch. I don't know why I decided to turn this game on this night. I watched this entire game from start to finish. It was one of the most fantastic games I've ever watched. Because every time Carolina scored, Virginia scored. Every time Virginia scored, Carolina scored. Until finally Drake May threw that final interception. This was a fantastic football game. I suggest y'all go check it out. If you're looking for an ACC game that's under the radar, this is one of them. But that's at my number 10. There's a lot of great games, but this came in at number 10 for me.
Well, I will say, it's pretty interesting to see the 2023 edition of the South's oldest rivalry. I will say, though, next year, North Carolina is going to be gunning for blood against Virginia. They are not going to be looking past them again. But I will say, do North Carolina solid and don't put this game on the CW.
Ah, yes. How could I forget? The CW curse lives. And if you don't know out there, obviously if you watch college football religiously, before we get on to Jackson's here, if you watch college football religiously, you understand what we mean by the CW curse. But then enlighten you real fast if you're just a casual watcher. The CW curse is the CW owns the rights to some ACC football games. It's in their contract where they negotiated. They get so many football games out of the year, basketball, yada, yada, yada. A lot of lawyers, boring stuff. None of that's fun. But the CW curse is when all the underdogs seem to win. Pitt, Virginia, Wake, all those teams were underdogs and they ended up winning, I believe. So that's why we call it the CW curse. Because if you go play on the CW, you might as well forget forget it right there. But that was my number 10.
Well, I will say, though, for those that are looking to bet on some college football games next year, make sure you bet on the underdog that's on CW.
That is true. But Jackson, they've heard enough about my number 10. Let's get into your number 10. Jackson has at number 10, week 3, Kansas defeating Kansas State 30-27 in a thriller, a 61-yard field goal as the Tigers' season sets off on a ride. But Jackson, what's the story behind putting this one at 10?
Well, when I was looking at the top 10 games in all of college football, I took into consideration of the games that changed the 2023 season for some people. Now, Missouri, I don't even think was expected to have a big season like they did, let alone go upset the Ohio State Buckeyes in bowl season. Nobody expected that. But here's what led up to it. This wonderful, fantastic finish by the Missouri Tigers against Kansas State, the defending Big 12 champs. And I got to say, that was basically the whole turning point of the whole season for Missouri. I mean, what an amazing game winner. I mean, the tail end of that game, that was wow. I was just impressed. I mean, you see 82 here made a big kick for it was like 59 yards, 61 yards, but it was just a huge game winner. And it was in rainy weather, no less. You think Adam Vinatieri kicked it. But I'll never forget it right there. I mean, Brady Cook, we saw him balling out. Cody Schrader and Luther Burden, Luther Burden the third. I don't know what's up with me today. Luther Burden the third had a big game that day. It was just a huge, fantastic finish for the Cats. And I will say, though, week 3 was a boring week for some people. But I always tell people, when there's a boring week in all college football, be prepared for some upsets to happen. And that week, Missouri upset the Kansas State Wildcats.
Yeah. And, I just got a quick note. This is the game that set not only Missouri's season off, but also saved Eli Drinkwitz in his career because he was on some hot seat discussions before this. And Jackson, I'm going to lighten our audience here, but me and you picked Missouri to go 2-10. I believe 4-8. It was either 4-8 or 2-10. Either way,
mine
3
was
and
3
9.
and 9.
With me and Jackson, predicted him to go 3 and 9. Boy, oh boy, the next year when we do these predictions, we'll think long and hard before we make any rash decisions like that. Again,
well, Harrison Mavis with that 61-yarder made us think. That's for sure. I was like, "Oh, the Missouri Tigers a big apology."
But Jackson, on to number 9.
Oh man, the Houston West Virginia matchup from Week 7 on Thursday night, and. There was a lot of talk at that time. Dana Holgorsen was still in that hot seat, and Neil Brown was just getting off it seemed. But then, boom, the Hail Mary pass from Houston, and it's a game winner. And we see Dana Holgorsen buying himself some time. He got that big win over West Virginia. That was just awesome. I mean, tell us the backstory on how you put this game at 9.
So, Jackson, this was one of those, just for the ending alone. I mean, West Virginia converts a 4th and 10, and they're celebrating, high-fiving. Neil Brown is on his way to getting another big-time win. Maybe West Virginia is a dark horse in the Big 12. And then the Hail Mary. Donovan Smith the Hail Mary, the Cougars win it. It was madness that night, and it arguably saved Dana Holgerson just a little bit longer before he met his demise. But this was a great game. It was on Fox Sports 1 on a Thursday night. You know, go check it out if you can. This was an awesome game. And, I think it'll be one that'll be remembered in Big 12 history as the night that the Cougars saved Dana Holgerson. But that's why I put it at number 9. It was just a great way to end a football game. Couldn't ask for a better ending.
Yeah, I mean, Smith threw that game winner right there. It was just huge for the Cougars. I mean, eh, I really have no words for it because it's just holy cow. That was awesome. Although not awesome for our West Virginia friends. I'm sorry to
Yeah,
say.
yeah. To all of our West Virginia fans, I know you were probably hoping that this would not make the list. I'm sorry, but it just had to. It just had to. I'm sorry, but maybe Jackson could cheer you up with his number 9. Jackson, introduce. Let me introduce number 9 to them. Jackson has at number 9 from rivalry week, Ohio State and Michigan, the game. Arguably one of the greatest rivalries in all of college sports, maybe in all of sports, as Michigan takes down Ohio State 30-24 without Jim Harbaugh on the way to the national championship run. Jackson, what's the story behind putting this one at number 9? And I'm sure a lot of Michigan, Ohio State fans, why so low?
Well, I will be honest that there were some other games that got me really impressed more than Michigan, Ohio State, unfortunately. I mean, as you'll see in this list. But this was a great game, another great edition of the game. And, JJ McCarthy had some great plays, and you know, we saw some big plays from Blake Corum. And it was just a great game. It was just a loss for words, but it was just great for all of college football. They said, can Sharon Moore lead the Wolverines to another victory against Ohio State? And this was played for all the marbles, the East Division, let's be honest, the Big Ten as well, and a playoff spot. Because this was basically a playoff quarterfinal. Great matchup.
Sorry to all of our resident Iowa fans, but let's be truthful. No matter who came out and won this game, they were coming to Indy to beat you down. I'm sorry, but
Yeah. I just hope that next season, maybe the Buckeyes end the losing streak, or maybe the Wolverines keep that winning streak going. Either way, it's going to be a wild one. But this year's edition was basically a turning point right there for everybody. I mean, especially those last 3 games of Michigan's regular season when they didn't have Harbaugh. They wondered, could Sharon Moore do it? Well, he did. And now he's your new head coach at Michigan. Now that Harbaugh has told Michigan, look, there's no Super Bowl, there's no Lombardi in college football. So I'm going to hand the keys to the Porsche to Moore. Sharon, she's all yours.
Well, Jackson, on off that fairy tale ending, number 8 on our list. Introduce it, shall you? Shall you?
The Magnolia Bowl from 2023 between the Ole Miss Rebels and the LSU Tigers, where we basically had the turning point for second place of the West Division.
Yeah. And Jackson, as you can see, another shootout. I mean, I'll be quite frankly with you, Jackson. This was Jackson Dart versus Jaden Daniels. Whoever got the ball last was going to win this game, and it just so happened that Jackson Dart threw the biggest touchdown pass of the game, and it led to Ole Miss Rebels getting this W. And Jackson, it not only proved that Ole Miss was legit, it proved that Jackson Dart might be a Heisman contender, and he might be the best quarterback in the SEC. This game here just had star power written all over it. The defenses, weren't playing, but this was fantastic. It showed how talented both teams are on the offensive side of the ball. It was a great win by Ole Miss, and that's why I put it at 8. Nothing else to be said about it.
Well,
It was
go
ahead.
And there's a combined total yards of 1,343 total yards on offense, 706 total yards on offense from Ole Miss, and 637 total yards on offense for the LSU Tigers. This was a great game, and it basically changed the whole dynamic for who's going to be in second place for 2023.
Yeah, it did. It changed the dynamic big time, and that's why it's one of the most impactful games of the year. And it set Ole Miss off on the right foot. But at number 8, Jackson, you kind of have a bit of a, not a surprise, but I'm surprised it's so low because the importance of this game, come to find out, it was Nick Saban's last ever SEC championship victory. And Coach Saban rode off into the sunset. Well, almost, but the king of the SEC rode off into the sunset, thus boasting Alabama into the CFP. Sorry, Florida State fans, I know you don't want to hear it, but Jackson, I think I just explained your significance, but go ahead.
Well, I will say, Jalen Milroe had a pretty big game that day as he had 192 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. And we saw Roydell Williams having a great game as well. And Alabama got revenge against the Georgia Bulldogs because the last time they played them prior to this game was the 2022 national title from 2021, where the Bulldogs beat them. And if there's one thing Saban has been really good at throughout his coaching career, it was revenge games. And this game proved it. This was basically a playoff game, a playoff quarterfinal, because whoever won this game was getting in.
Yeah, but the only sad part about this game, Jackson, that people might frown on it is because we had to hear Greg Sankey on College Game Day lobbying for both teams to get in. That's the only part that might drag this down. But other than that, it was a great game.
Oh, for sure. This was a great game. And this is likely the last SEC game ever to be on CBS. Unless we see some SEC Big Ten games on CBS in 2024. Hint, hint, Alabama, Wisconsin.
Yeah, we're looking at you, CBS. Make it happen. Make it happen. Don't let them. Don't you let it get away. The opportunity's waiting. But
for sure. And there's plenty more opportunities where that comes in. And maybe in the next TV negotiations, we'll be back to seeing SEC on CBS at some point in our lives, years from now. Who knows? But in the meantime, let's go to Austin's number 7, where he had the battle between Caleb Williams and Michael Penix in Week 10 of the Washington Huskies and the USC Trojans. Austin, explain away.
So, Jackson, we all remember 2018, the Chiefs and Rams when they were in the Coliseum. It was called one of arguably the greatest games to ever be played on an NFL field. And this reminds me of that so much. Like when I watched this game, Jackson, I got so many flashbacks because Penix and Caleb Williams were trading blows until Dylan Johnson put the game on ice and said, you know what? I'm tired of this. And he was running like a madman. Like Jackson, this will forever be a game that I look on this is a game that the score is 10 points, but if you watch this game, you will know this game was there for the taking for USC. I mean, this was a fantastic game, and it had two great quarterbacks, some great wide receiver play, running back play from Washington, Dylan Johnson. Fantastic. I suggest you go check it out. And plus, this was the last edition of the Washington USC in Pac 12 play. Now, let that sink in. Washington USC will not be playing again under the Pac 12 banner, but we could see a little Big Ten action. But I put it at number 7 because there's a couple games I think ahead of it that I got to give a little more credit to.
Well, we'll go onward to number 7.
Number 7, Jackson has from week 2, Texas beats Alabama 34-24, and thus begins the argument, is Texas truly back? Well, Jackson, is that why you put it here? Because this was the game that Texas was back? Explain away.
Honestly, I felt like that this was a great game. It was great enough to be higher than Michigan, Ohio State, and the SEC title game, because this was the game that changed the trajectory of the playoff field for 2023. This was going to be a turning point for whoever gets in. And we saw that Quinn Ewers had a great game against Alabama, as he had 349 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. And, the key to beating an Alabama team with Nick Saban is to have some great quarterback play. And the Texas Longhorns proved it. And, it was the first time since 2007 that a non-conference team has come to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama. I mean, that's big in of itself. Nobody comes into Tuscaloosa and beats Alabama, let alone as a non-conference team. Do you know how big that is? Oh my God, that's big.
Yeah, it rarely ever happens. Rarely. And I will say, Jackson, me personally, this game here showed that Alabama was more weaker than they had been, but it also showed the strength of Texas. So I'm okay with you putting it at number 7 if that's where you feel it belongs. Me personally, it wasn't for me.
Well, there's a certain Texas game that you and I both agree on that's in our top 5, but we'll get to that after we get to number 6 on our list. But yeah, it was the first time a power school has come into Alabama's backyard and beaten them since 2003. That's another stat right there. That was in the dark days of Alabama football.
Yeah, that's something that Texas will be able to hold. And, before we move on, I know when we get to the top 10, Jackson, I know you were hoping for that rematch, but Washington and Michigan had to foil it. But we'll get to that soon enough. Yeah. On to number 6.
For sure. Let's go. And you had Washington, Oregon, the first edition from 2023 as number 6. Why not? Why didn't you have it higher exactly? I am so curious.
Well, because we'll get to it when we get up to the top 3 here. But there's a couple games on there that have a little special meaning to me. Especially, you'll see at number 2 that have a little more special meaning. And I think there was more impactful games yet to come. I'm not saying this game wasn't impactful. I'm not saying it whatsoever. I don't want anybody to take that out of context. I'm not saying that whatsoever. This game meant a lot to the Pac-12. But I think you'll see as we go along on my side of the list, I had more games that I thought were more impactful to college football. This was a great game, but the only thing that I think could have hindered this, in my opinion, is the fact that Oregon made those bonehead decisions and went forward on fourth down a couple different times when they should have just taken the points. I get it, you're trying to win the game, but take the points and go up 3 and go up 6. You're playing Michael Penix on the other side. Don't give him hope that he could come down and tie it, especially if he's only down a field goal. Don't let that happen. But it was Michael Penix to Roma Dunze in the back of the end zone for the touchdown that led to the Huskies' victory, thus catapulting them to greater heights. But that's why I have them at number 6. It's a great game, though. I enjoyed it.
Oh, I will say though, it's gonna be fun seeing this on rivalry week next year for 2024. That's gonna be amazing right there.
Jackson, let's see what you have at number 6, shall we?
Well, it
At
feels like a
number
last edition of sorts. The last
at
edition of the Bedlam at number 6.
So Jackson has picked the last edition of the Bedlam at number 6 as Oklahoma State defeats Oklahoma 27-24, thus getting the last laugh and thus owning permanent bragging rights until further notice, unless Oklahoma or Oklahoma State decide to run it back. But Jackson, was this just a nostalgia pick, possibly on your part, and maybe a sad one at that?
No, this was a great one because I mean this was a great game from Ollie Gordon and the Oklahoma State Cowboys, as he had 33 carries, 138 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, this game was just a great one. I mean, Dylan Gabriel made some good plays here and there, but it wasn't enough to get Oklahoma out of a loss. I mean, they were coming off that big loss against the Kansas Jayhawks. And in a way, this permanently hurt the national title contention for the Sooners. And any shot they had, gone. And like you said, the Cowboys have permanent bragging rights over Oklahoma until the next matchup occurs, which will probably be in the playoffs, I want to say. I hope it happens this soon.
Yeah. And now bear witness, everyone. Me and Jackson have dueling number 5s. So Jackson, you can reveal what our number 5s are. We'll do this one together because we
Oh,
both
here
thought
we go.
alike on this one. Spoiler alert.
Well, it's a rivalry that's definitely on there permanently.
And I'm
That
glad it
Oklahoma.
is.
Yeah, because I mean, but before we head to that, I am gonna miss the Bedlam. I mean, it'll likely be back at basketball, but I'm not sure it's gonna be back at college football until, like we said, playoff matchup. Onward, our number 5, the 2023 edition of the Red River rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah, this is pretty simple. I mean, me and Jackson, I'll let him explain why he put his where he did, but I mean, this is when you talk about rivalries, this is in the conversation with Michigan, Ohio State, Bama, Auburn. This is in the same conversation. And what an ending this was to this game. And I tell you this, Jackson, this is the most fun I've had watching a Red River rivalry in a long time. I was thrilled to death on this one. And especially with Dylan Gabriel and the way he went down the field, it never seemed like he was pressured. And he just went down, hit Nick Anderson for the touchdown. What a great win for the Sooners. Arguably could have been chosen as the best game of the year, but I put it at 5.
Same right here. I mean, Dylan Gabriel and, the Oklahoma Sooners, and we saw Quinn Ewers and Jonathan Brooks and all these guys like Xavier Worthy making big plays all over the place. And, every time you see the Red River rivalry, you're going to see big plays, including from 2008, 2009, 2007, this year, 2018, 2020, 2021. I could go on and on and on about the history of the Red River rivalry. And let me tell you, folks, one of the best plays of the game was that game-winning touchdown by Gabriel. When he threw the Nick Anderson, that was a huge game winner right there.
Yeah, it was. It was such a big moment, and it set Oklahoma off on the right foot. But now, on to number 4. Introduce it, Jackson.
You have the 2023 edition of the Ohio State Notre Dame matchup from NBC. Take us away, buddy.
Yeah, this was one of those games where, as those other two, I had high scoring games. This one, a lot of people said this was boring. Why was this put on NBC? This should have been put on other things because it was just defense. Like, don't get me wrong, I love offense, but this kind of game right here, I love these kind of games. These are fun to watch because it shows what kind of team you have. It builds character, it builds grit. Like, it makes me as a fan want to see, like, is this team as good as they say they are? Are they as tough as they say they are? But Jackson, one thing that really showed to me that Kyle McCord and Ohio State were legit is that game-winning drive. 1 second left, the touchdown by Travion Henderson. The Buckeyes win on a walk-off. And then we hear Ryan Day talk about how tough the team is and how Lou Holtz shouldn't be questioning them anymore. And Ohio State's legit, and they're always tough. But this was a fantastic game, especially that game-winning drive at 3rd and 19, Abuka. They took Harrison away completely, but it didn't matter. Kyle McCord said, okay, let me show you what I got, Notre Dame. Just fantastic. Like, that's why this is at number 4.
Yeah, I mean, this was a great, fantastic finish right there. Although, this should be a reminder for Notre Dame, do not be wearing green on your big games. Don't do that. That cost you against Ohio State, and it cost you against USC in 2005. Don't do that, Fighting Irish.
Yeah, don't do that, Notre Dame. Go all gold. Go all gold. That might help you better. Just don't wear green.
And make sure the day before you have a big game, or like 2 days or the week of when you have a big game, make sure you smudge the entire team. That way you don't have any bad energy whatsoever.
But Jackson, maybe your number 4 will bring good energy.
Yeah.
Number 4, the 2024-2023 All-State Sugar Bowl as Texas and Washington, the first of 2 semifinal games, with a second one that was televised, as Washington wins 37-31, and Michael Penix and the Huskies are championship bound. But would they complete it? Well, unfortunately for them, it ended there. But Jackson, give us the significance behind this.
Well, it was a top-notch shootout between Michael Penix and Quinn Ewers. I mean, as Quinn Ewers had 318 passing yards and a touchdown for that game. And Penix had 430 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. And I'll tell you, Jalen McMillan made some big plays that changed the game for the greater good. I mean, it was just huge right there.
Yeah, Jackson, I will say, before we move on, the Texas almost came back. Washington played the mess around and almost gave it away. Like, they're very lucky. Very, very lucky. But they got it done. Congrats, Washington. You're the All-State Sugar Bowl champs. But just a reminder, don't do that again. You scared a lot of Husky fans.
Exactly. I mean, Washington's defense was good enough to force a 4-and-out on Texas. And that was what saved the game for him. And I'm looking at the total yards on offense. You know, Texas had 498 and Washington had 532 total yards on offense. And, you know, when I add it up, it's basically 1,030 total yards on offense combined. That's big. Yep. You're muted.
But now, Jackson, we are in the top 3, the best of the best. Hold on. And proper drum roll, please. Please. Introduce my number 3.
There we go. Speed marker. The Colorado Buffaloes circling the wagons against the TCU Horned Frogs on Big Noon Kickoff. Austin, give us your thoughts on this game.
Now, when I meant impactful, this is what I meant right here. The primetime era started off with a bang. The most influential head coach of all time getting a big-time win against the national runner-ups at the time, TCU Horned Frogs, 45-42, and Jackson thus began the primetime era. Because, Jackson, we all need a little primetime in our life. And, Jackson, this really began the Colorado hype train. We all remember College Game Day went there. Big Noon went back there. Even 60 Minutes had to pay a visit. Even the Rock.
60 Minutes paid a visit to Colorado State, but they did visit primetime, though.
Even the Rock showed up on campus. I mean, Jackson, this game set the whole thing in motion. I might even argue this might be the most influential game in all of college sports this past year, maybe. But there was a certain crimson tide that changed the tide, if you catch what I'm saying. But we'll get to that.
Oh yeah.
But this is why it's at number 3. I could have put it at number 1, but I didn't. But Jackson, let me introduce number 3 for him.
Here you go. Boom.
Number 3 was the granddaddy of them all, the 2024 Rose Bowl, as Michigan defeats Alabama 27-20. So sorry, Jackson, on the loss, but at least it was in the granddaddy of them all. But go ahead, good buddy. What's your reasoning behind putting this here, and why is it because Alabama was other than Michigan winning?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people wondered, could Michigan win the big game in the postseason? We knew they could win the big one in the regular season against the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now the question was, could they win in the granddaddy of them all? Well, they did. I mean, J.J. McCarthy made some big plays, and we saw Blake Corum making some big plays. And, oh, man, it's at the top of my head, but it was that 4th and 2 play. I mean, that's what I was thinking about, that 4th and 2 play. And it looked like the game was on the line. Michigan looks like they could be losing again. But JJ, back to pass, throws it to Blake Corum, first down. And then we see him making a big pass to Roman Wilson. That helped things as well. And then that game-tying touchdown to Roman Wilson. Then we go to overtime, and we see Blake Corum, as you see right there on this little picture, going for that top play, getting them in the red zone. Well, getting them for a touchdown. I mean, those Bama guys, they're trying to stop them, but they can't do it. They cannot stop them.
Jackson, they were tired. They were exhausted. Like, I'm not trying to take anything away from it, but Bama looked like that. They legit looked like they were exhausted. Like the
I'd be
defense.
exhausted.
Go ahead.
I'd be exhausted too if I had to go against J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum and Roman Wilson and Donovan Edwards. They'll cheat me up like a chicken nugget.
Well, here's the thing, Jackson. The funny thing is Blake Corum, he's like Derrick Henry. He beats you down. Like, you notice that. He just beats you down, and then finally he's like, okay, now I'm going to break off a 65-yard run on you. And it's just off to the races from there.
Yeah. I mean, this was a huge win. And I'll be honest, when I saw them beating Alabama, I thought to myself, Michigan's going to win it all. I think they're going to pull this off. Because unfortunately, Washington doesn't have a defense, but Michigan has a top-notch defense. So
it was a dream come true for Michigan. They're sure. And spoiler alert, they won it all. They're the champs. So, but
and another spoiler alert. This is Harbaugh's only national title in all of college football. Now he's off chasing that Super Bowl in LA. Let's give a big introduction to your number 2, Austin. You had this game, week 12, 11 a.m. on ABC, the Louisville Cardinals and the Miami Hurricanes at number 2. What was that exactly?
So, Jackson, this was another one that I have to explain from earlier what I meant by significance. And this was one of these games that I put here simply because of not only it was a great game to watch, gave me a heart attack while I was at it, but I think I lost a lot of hair that day from stressing out so much. But this was such a great game to watch, and the fact that we had been in the ACC since 2014, and this was our first ever trip. We win this game, we clinch a trip to the ACC title game, and this is going to forever hold a special place in my heart. Like, whenever I talk to my grandkids and my kids about what makes Louisville football so special, I'm going to show them this game. I'm going to show them that this is what makes it special. Moments like this. Yeah, we didn't win it, but I can always take pride in we got there. And that's why it's at number 2 for me. It holds a special place in my heart. And plus, it was a great game. And they did give me a little bit of anxiety attack when they batted the ball into the defender's, into the receiver's hand. We don't need another one of those again. You could have done without that, but a win's a win, and we were off to the ACC title game.
Well, I mean, that last play, that was a takeaway for me right there, especially that Hail Mary pass. When Miami was 5 yards short. I mean, that had to have been the reason why you were like, "Oh, I'm gonna lose my hair." Ah!
That and the fact that we kept trading leads with them. Like, it seemed like we couldn't put them away. But we got it done, and it's at my number 2. Now, let me give you a good introduction for your number 2, Jackson, because you were just ragging on me about where I just put this game. So we're going to let the people understand why you put this maybe a little higher than I did. Well, here in just a second. But it is the last ever edition of the Pac-12 championship game, and it was between the Oregon Ducks and the Washington Huskies, as the Huskies get a 34-31 win and claim the last ever Pac-12 title. And that means the Huskies will be forever known as the last ever Pac-12 champion. and they will have the claim to fame that they were the best Pac-12 team of all time. No more arguments about it. But Jackson, what was your reasoning about putting this at number 2 instead of number 1?
Well, I mean, we'll go to the earlier matchup here in a little bit. Oops, I just gave a spoiler. Sorry about that. But anyway, the Pac-12 title game rematch. I mean, little did we, well, I don't know what everybody was thinking in the preseason about what was going to be going on. I mean, they figured Washington, Oregon would be having a dogfight, but they didn't think USC's defense would be this bad. But Washington, Oregon's thinking, we've been nice today. We're going to get some revenge. We're going to get some revenge in the Pac-12 title game. Close, but no cigar for the Donald Ducks. I mean, but there were big plays made by Bo Nix and big plays made by Michael Penix. I mean, holy cow. I mean, Dylan Johnson made some great plays as well. And this was basically for the playoff spot for 2023. And, you know, that's what made it so significant, was that the last ever Pac-12 title game was the winner is getting in the playoffs regardless. It was a great game. And we're going to see many more great additions of the Washington-Oregon rivalry for many, many, many years to come.
Yes, that's the one thing we can look forward to. You know, we can be sad about the Pac-12 going away, but Oregon-Washington, that will still be a thing, which is good. It's good for college football. But I will have to say, though, Jackson, if you've seen the look at some of those coaches and players' eyes when they held that Pac-12 title trophy up, they kind of had that look of like this is the last. We're the last ever champions. Like we won the final one. That means it's always ours. Like that's got to be pretty cool feeling that. Like they now have that. Nobody can ever take that away from them. Like that's a crowning achievement.
Yeah. I mean that was just big in of itself.
But I will say though, Jackson, now we're on to number 1 for both of us. And before you introduce it, Jackson, I know you're gonna love my number 1, especially after you give this great introduction. But I will just say, Jackson, move over, Kick Six. You've got a new runner-up now. It's called Bond. Isaiah Bond. Go ahead, Jackson.
There we go. We got the last ever Iron Bowl that's aired on CBS. But the Iron Bowl's moving to a new home, which is ABC. But luckily, Brad Nessler, Gary Danielson, and even Kirk Herbstreit, while he was waiting for a game, he was getting excited over this one. The 2023 Alabama-Auburn rivalry in the Iron Bowl at Jordan-Hare.
Fourth and 31, all the marbles and Alabama's playoff hopes rest on Jalen Milroe's arm, and he finds Isaiah Bond in the back of the end zone. The corner of the end zone. And thus cementing the history in the history books. The history books is written by the winners. And all it will say at the end of the day is it'll be Milroe to Bond. And Alabama wins this edition of the Iron Bowl. And they will also have the bragging rights of winning the last ever Iron Bowl edition on CBS. But don't you fear, the new series will start on ABC starting next fall. No series finale here, folks. Just good old great fashion soap opera continue on. This rivalry should never go away. This is my opinion. I may get in trouble for saying this, but this is the greatest rivalry in college football. Even better than Michigan, Ohio State, in my opinion. I'm sorry, Ohio State, Michigan fans. I said what I said. I mean, you've got the kick six, punt, Bama punt. Now you've got 4th and 31, Isaiah Bond. I mean, this right here, Jackson, is the epitome of what it's all about. Although, on the other hand, I know we got to get to yours, but I will say, Auburn, what were you doing? Why was Isaiah Bond wide open? I get you're playing prevent defense, but how did you let him get open like that? Like,
I'm not
take it
gonna
away.
lie. When I was watching the 4th and 31 play, I'm like, even though we're still in the SEC title game, our playoff hopes are done. But then Milrow throwing the Bond, I was like, holy cow, this happened. Oh my God.
I mean, yeah, Jackson. I'm sure a lot of Alabama's fans, their hearts sunk when it got to 4th and 31. They were like, man, we're in the SEC title game, but we're just demoralized right about now because our playoff hopes are all but gone. But the hero, Jalen Milroe.
Yep.
And this is the undisputed number one best game of the year, in my opinion. But, Jackson, your number one game of the year is the first edition of Oregon and Washington. Spoiler alert, this was not the last time they would play. They would play for all the marbles again. But if you remember back on my slides, I had this at number 7. I didn't have this as high. But, no, or number 6, excuse me. I didn't have this as high as Jackson. So, Jackson, why did you put this at number 1 over all things that took place this year? What drove you to put this at number 1?
I mean, everyone was showing up for this game. I mean, this was a fantastic finish. I mean, especially that game-winning touchdown from Michael Penix to Roma Dunze. That was a great win right then and there. I mean, it was just some great plays from Bo Nix to Michael Penix to Bucky Irving to Tez Johnson. I mean, that incomplete pass, on 4th down. I mean, you got to ask yourself, 4th and 3 at the Washington 47, would you punt or would you go for it?
What's the time and score? That makes a big difference.
Well, it was 2 minutes left in the game. That was the thing.
It's hard because what it ultimately did, it ultimately set up the game winner. Jackson, me, I would have punted the ball and said, listen, defense, this is on you. We've got defense. We need you to make one play, just one play. One play. All we need is one. Not like that. That's all you got to tell them. We just need one. I would have punted, but everybody thinks different. What would you have done, Jackson? Are you a punting or you going to go for the kill shot?
Well, I mean, there's a time and place for everything. But in the biggest game of the year, I'm going for the kill shot on 4th down. I'm a rambling, gambling man. What can I say?
No. I completely understand. I get that side of it because if you don't think you have the defense, I get that. But for me, I'm like, punt it. Like, let's see what the defense can do. Now, even though, like we just demonstrated with my number one, it's not always good to leave it to your defense either. But especially but 4th and 31, the chances of that getting completed again are very slim. But in this game here, I understand why you do that if you think your defense cannot stop Penix one more time. If you run it and you get them at going length of the field and you don't think you could stop them one more time or at least hold them to a field goal, I understand why you go for the kill shot. I get that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what you got to do. You got to go for it. So,
Yeah, I agree. But that was our top 10 list. I mean, I think overall we did pretty good, Jackson. I mean, we didn't really pick any outrageous games that were like, you picked UTEP at Tennessee? How dare you?
We're, yeah, we're not worried about UTEP Tennessee, although Tennessee may though.
I will say though, Jackson, before we go, our honorable mentions before we go, I have five. Some of my honorable mentions were Clemson, Kentucky from the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl, Oregon, Washington, the Pac-12 title rematch, uh, Oklahoma, Kansas, Oklahoma State, BYU, and then my last one that I try to keep it at five. My last one was, unfortunately, this hurts me. Not hurts me, but Clemson, Florida State, and then Ohio State, Michigan. Jackson, what are some of your honorable mentions?
Well, Clemson Duke was an honorable mention for me. Oklahoma Kansas was another great honorable mention for me. Oklahoma State Kansas State. West Virginia Houston. Hey, what can I say? I'm a huge simp for the Big 12. But man, there's another one. There's plenty of them. I mean, oh man, that last Boise State, Colorado State, one of the biggest comebacks for Colorado State. I mean, a 21-point comeback with 4 minutes left in the game. You just don't see that. You don't see that. I mean, it was just mighty impressive right there.
Yeah, I have no issues with your honorable mentions, Jackson. I mean, it's all about what you like and what you don't like. Some people like more games from the Big 12. Some may like more SEC games than others. But this was our list, and like I said at the beginning, take no offense. It's what we personally love and like, and we all have different tastes. Some people like the ACC, some don't. It all depends on what you like. But Jackson, do the outro the only way we know how, good buddy.
Well, you can check out my good buddy Austin right here on YouTube at Sports Talk with Austin 2002. Let's get him to 100 subs. Let's get him to 200, 300, 400, and so on and so forth. And you can also find him at Austin W1980 2639 right here on Twitter, or Twits, as our good buddy John D'Animo calls it. You can also find me on YouTube at Jackson Johnson 979, where I'm 201 subs away from the magic number 500. And you can also find me on Twitter at Jackson09960335 and on Instagram and Threads at Jackson Johnson 543908, where I just run my mouth about the latest in college football, the NFL, college basketball, NBA, and all other sorts of stuff, where I just run my mouth about. But Austin, you got some great stuff heading your way. What's going on there on your lane?
So I got a lot of great things coming. A lot of videos could be put out coming up. I'm going to be starting my season in reviews, talking about, I plan on doing Florida, Michigan, try to get all the teams I can, try to cover everybody, talk about everybody, talk about all my teams. And, by the time you all see this, hopefully everything goes well. I will be having Locked On Gators Brandon Olson on to do the season in review about the Florida Gators tomorrow night, which is Thursday. And you could catch it on www.youtube/Sports Talk with Austin 2002. I'm on the road to 100 subs. So check me out. Please make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe to both of our channels. Jackson, you got anything lined up for your great guest coming up, or are you just chilling right now?
Well, right now I'm just kind of chilling out, but you never know. Got some big stuff in the works. Pretty soon I'll probably have some episodes that are too crazy even for YouTube. And with that being said, this is yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and
And
my good
Austin
buddy.
Williams.
Yep, Austin, take us away, man.
Well, as the old saying goes, stay safe, stay warm. It's cold outside, or it may be hot outside, depending on our West Coast friends. But in the meantime, in between time, y'all stay safe. Y'all, y'all have a wonderful time out there. Enjoy your time. And let's get Jackson to 500 subs. Let's get me to 100, and let's grow together, everybody. Until next time, we'll see you then. Go Cards, everybody.